You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Johannes Ekström of Avatar. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
You know that feeling when you just record a whole spot and everything's sounding good and everything's flowing great, and then you realize that you clicked the wrong input and you weren't actually recording any of it? That's what just happened, but that doesn't make me any less enthusiastic about the sinusoid sliver. The littlest, tiniest, most itty-bitty, strongest patch cable on the market with the best warranty. Check out sinusoid.com and check out the sliver. You haven't checked out the sliver yet? I don't know what's going on. I've been talking to you about the sliver for a long time. Unless you're a first-time listener, which this might be the first time you've heard of the sliver. So check out sinusoid.com and check the sliver patch cable. It's a really, really small, very reliable patch cable that you can put your board together with, and it's the smallest soldered patch cable on the market. So check them out. Plus, if you are a first-time listener, you probably don't know they have a 100-year warranty. So anything that goes wrong in that time period, unless you are a member of the undead, you won't have to worry about your patch cables anymore. Send it in to them, they'll fix you up, and they're some of the best guys in the business. So make sure and check them out at sinusoid.com. And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Gun Street Wiring Shop. Gun Street Wiring Shop is semi-local to me out of Bend, Oregon. You've heard me talk about them on previous episodes, and I really do mean everything I say about them. Sean has been amazing. He's been an amazing sponsor of the show. Recently just sent me a stamp with my face, like in the stamp. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's so cool. And I don't know. It's hard to describe. But what you care about is that they make the finest guitar wiring harnesses on the market. They got an insane attention to detail. They got great customer service. They will walk you through every step, if necessary, for installing a new harness in your guitar to get some extra functionality, some extra tone. It depends on what you need. It's all up to you. Gun Street can take care of you. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com. Check out what they have to offer. If you don't see what you need, they will fix you up. Sean and company are great people, and they are heavily invested in supporting the guitar community. Just go check them out. They are fantastic. gunstreetwiringshop.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ToneMob.com podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Richard Hoover of Santa Cruz Guitars. How's it going?
It's a good day for this, you can be sure.
All right, good deal. That's awesome. I mean, it's never got to be a good day to be stuck inside down in Santa Cruz, though, right?
You know, we live in such natural splendor. It's amazing. But we can get out in it at will. And one of the lucky things for us is we're dealing with people that are pretty happy when they come in and even happier when they leave. So not like a lot of jobs.
That's very, very true. Yeah, I was actually really excited to talk to you. Got a friend of mine that has one of your guitars and he really likes it. And then I think Carolyn, your assistant there, she told me that she had heard this. I posted in my Facebook group that you were coming on, although I didn't specify who it was. I just said, we're going to actually talk about acoustic guitars this time, because we primarily talk electrics most of the time. And
I'm a bit ambidextrous, but good. My focus is acoustic, and that's certainly what I have my expertise in.
That's perfect. I got a message from a industry friend, Nick Greer, who said, just
Cool.
out of curiosity, who are you getting to talk acoustic guitars on there? and I said, oh, Richard from Santa Cruz. And he sent me a picture. I just bought this Santa Cruz today.
Oh,
It's
that's
fantastic.
awesome. That's awesome.
So he told me to make sure that you knew that he was very, very pleased with his instrument.
Give Nick my love. I think he's got excellent taste.
He does. I think so too. He's a wonderful guy. But I mean, we can just get started into the meat and potatoes here, and I'm actually really excited about this part.
Oh, great. I'll make you a promise. I'll stick to physics and proven science. I won't burden you with opinions, and if I do, I'll warn you first.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, you're gonna kind of blow my mind if you're talking about science. I only deal in opinion over here. So
Well, good. We're a good team.
So let me get like your musical backstory and how did it become, where you are today with the company and
Sure.
everything
Well, I'll
else?
hit some bullet points here. I began to play guitar for the same reason everyone did, to impress a girl, and that segue went into guitar making this simply. I was playing guitar one day, sitting on the curb, waiting for her to come home from school, and it crossed my mind that somebody made these. And if I could make a guitar, I could combine most of my interests in one time. And this predates anything in print on guitar making, specifically steel string guitar making. But luckily, my mother was a reference librarian, the Google of the day. If you wanted to write a book or do an essay, you called my mom rather than go online. And she recommended we find the books necessary to put the guitar back together, because that was my solution, take it apart and figure out how it worked. And the thing that was
Right.
most readily available, or the only thing available really, was treatises on the violin, both diaries from makers, speculation about the secrets, how they work, things on wood. So that's what I ate up and studied. And the good fortune there was that, of course, in the violin, they are really focused on bringing out the most potential sound that they can in the instrument. They're really picky about how it sounds. And they do go to a lot of pains to control that. So I began my career building the guitar, controlling the different elements of sound, just like you would on a sound system at home. That's really different than how most steel strings are made. Most steel strings are made on the premise that they're loud enough, and marketing will take care of the rest. So you can, change the world if you write the right song on the cheapest guitar. And big companies really don't have to be concerned about sound. So as a single builder, back before there was any such thing as even the boutique market, it was tough. And I decided that it would be a lot more effective if I worked with some other people and we could amplify, our ideas. We could experiment, and heaven's sakes, we could build guitars faster and more efficiently. So I took on two partners in 1975. After building on my own for some years, and that was the perfect team. And some would say the real foreshadowing of the boutique guitar movement, because we weren't out there to start another Martin guitar company. We were there to build custom guitars, very much in the violin tradition. So 42 years later, next week, here we are, and we stayed to that principle. We're probably 80% custom. Of course, that's form, function, colors, but also we build to sound. And that's unusual in the market, and that's our niche. So there's a mouthful.
I like it. I like it. So, like, what was that guitar that you first broke down and took apart to try to kind of understand it?
It
What
was
was it?
a harmony, and I'm guessing it might have been like an H150. That rings a bell. It was all mahogany, and it was an OM size. And I remember standing in front of the mahogany and the spruce one, and trying to decide, do you want the brown one or the white one? But it was fortuitous, because I love mahogany as a tone wood, and it's been a career goal to get mahogany the respect it deserves in the steel string market.
I see. I see. So it seems like a lot of people have that story. It starts with an old harmony or something, in whether they're playing
Yeah.
it, building it,
Yeah,
etc.
I just, I love guitar. I love the music. I love working with my hands. And as I said, whoa, I can do everything I want at once, which is pretty much what we all want.
Of course, of course. So, I mean, that's me. I like guitars and talking, so this works out really well.
We're in our element. Yeah.
um, so you started with the harmony, and then the books on that were on violin making. You said, have you seen? I know they're similar in that they're both stringed instruments,
Right.
but they are different. What principles from violin making did you carry over into the guitar world, or which did you find didn't apply?
You're right. The violin works physically. It works differently than a steel string guitar because the strings pump the top up and down, where the acoustic guitar rolls the top. And but what the principles that are in common is the manipulation of mass, weight, to change the EQ. You know how loud bass is versus treble, and the tone, how bright or dark the instrument is. And then first, fundamentally, if you want to know one of the primary secrets of Stradivarius, it was unlike a factory that needs to build an instrument with a formula of dimensions, whereby
Mm-hmm.
you make all your parts really accurately. They fit together one way. You get to the market at a good price. The master violin makers assembled the instrument of frequencies. So they were composing the instrument like a chord on a piano, rather than the top being exactly 4.3 millimeters. It was close to 4.3, but it was thicknessed until they got the right frequency. And then the rest of the components came together in harmony, and that allowed sustain and the development of overtones, which is what everybody wants in their guitar, even if they don't know how to put it into words.
That's true. That's true. We're always looking for that kind of extra layer
Sure,
of
rich, full,
richness and
colorful, and it lasts a long
whatnot.
time. Another thing we all want.
Uh-huh. So I never really thought about that. What you were talking about the top. So the violin actually like
That's
pulsates
right.
up and down. You said, and
Yeah.
a guitar
Well,
top
you imagine,
rolls. I didn't know
the
that.
tailpiece holds the strings, as does the peg head, and the bridge is, the strings cross the bridge in the middle at, the strings cross the bridge in the middle, and when you pluck the string, it goes up and down. So does an arch top, but the steel string has the ball end held against the top underneath, so it pulls up, and then it crosses the saddle and pushes down. So it's that rolling motion that allows it to pump air that we perceive as sound.
That's very interesting. I didn't think. I knew that the top vibrated, but I didn't actually think of. I kind of just imagined the whole thing just kind of shaking. I didn't think about it being
Sure.
directional.
Well,
Um,
you'll know more than most guitar makers before we're done.
this is perfect. I won't know how to be able to apply it, but I'll be able to sound like halfway
Oh, heck
not
yeah.
dumb. Yeah, that's fascinating. So, as far as like playability is concerned,
hmm
I mean, obviously the violin and the guitar are vastly different in that regard, or at least how you
hmm
physically play the instrument. What were your thoughts there going into it? Because it's easy to read, and apply some of the sonic elements, but I
Sure.
imagine the playability elements you kind of had to figure out on your own, or how did that happen?
Yeah, because there was a lot of false assumptions about how the guitar string worked, and a lot of engineering had been based on that. So hold on to your seat here, and I'll explain it to you. You would, when you pluck the string, of course it doesn't move straight up and down. That would be dreamy, because then if your frets were level, you just have to have it higher at the bridge than at the nut. And every time you played a fret, it would clear the next one and life would be good. The string moves in a funny shape. And when you play your guitar, you're likely going to get some rattling or buzzing here and there as you play harder. And even before it starts to rattle or buzz, you lose tone. So if you were in a music store and you played a nice, expensive, big American brand guitar, you have no idea how good it could sound if somebody could have taken the time to do the proper adjustments. So here's what it is. We assumed that the string would move the most in the middle. If it's fixed at the nut in the saddle and you pluck it, it would move the most in the middle. And that's why the adjustable truss rod was developed, to put that matching curvature in the board and allow it more room to move in the middle so it didn't rattle or buzz. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Okay, so now get this. We would do it everything precisely, and then you play the guitar. It was fine, but the harder you play, eventually you find out it's going to start buzzing on the D and G string between the third and seventh fret. And all players experience this eventually, and they go WTF, and they go into the technician. And we didn't really know what caused that, but the technician would mill those frets, make them a little bit shorter, and the buzzes would go away. But now here's what we had is now when you press that string from the top of the fret to the board, it's since that fret was milled, it's traveling a shorter distance, putting less tension on it, and the string plays flat. So you don't have any buzzing, but in that area it plays slightly flat and the tone is different from the other fretted positions. And if you're a discerning player, that will drive you crazy. So to figure out what caused this, we had to see what was happening with the string, and the way we did it is we put a series of strobe lights and sequenced them so that they put the string in visual slow motion. And when we plucked the string, it was incredible. There was the answer. It doesn't move the most in the middle. It moves the most where you pluck it. So it's actually the last fret by the sound hole that needs the most clearance. And here was the aha moment. When you pluck it there, it echoes up around the third to the seventh fret, just like jumping on a waterbed. And that's where those buzzes were happening. So the bright idea, are you still with me or should we go on to something?
No. I'm
Okay,
totally
so
with you.
good. Catch this now.
I'm following you. Yeah.
With that, we went, oh, here's the problem. We were trying to change the shape of the frets to accommodate the string. What we need to do is change the shape of the board in the shape that the string moves. So when we put the frets in, the tops will actually be in the right place. So that's what we ended up doing, and like shaping the board in this actual geometry that the string moves. Then when the frets go in, the tops are in the right place, and you can get the action probably 20% closer with that. It plays in tune because the tension is the same and the tone is consistent throughout. And it was such a crazy breakthrough that the playability on our guitars when we send them out is kind of shocking. Um, it is a lot of extra work, and it's not practical for anybody trying to hit a price target because it adds some time into the instrument. But if you go to hot rod technicians around the world, I'd start dropping names, but I'd forget somebody. They know that, and they know to work the board before the frets go in. To get that stuff. So in essence, what we're doing to get a real hot rod setup is we're doing what you would do after you buy a guitar and go to a technician to get it right. And it's all physics and it's all science. And that's what's beautiful is there's no opinion to argue about when you're done. It's just right.
So what would you say, like, and it's hard to do without visual because this is just straight audio podcast, but what shape would you say the strings vibrate in? If it's not straight up and down, which that makes a lot of sense, is it like an
it's going to move in several
it
shapes from the initial attack to when it finally decays. But if we were looking from the side of it, you're in playing position, look at the side of the guitar. It's going to, when you pluck it, it's going to deflect the most right where you hit it and echo up on the other end, again, like jumping on a waterbed. And that's the shape that the string moves. If you looked at it in cross section, it'd make you dizzy. But using that geometry, you can come up with a way to shape the board that would work, whether you fretted it at the seventh fret or put a capo at the third fret or whatever. And let me give you the punchline here. That required so much handwork to do that people were in risk of repetitive stress injury, and we were really up against a real catch-22. To get good at it took about 6 months of practice, and about 8 months later, it started to hurt. And that's the danger zone. But luckily, after we developed this, we found out that the guys doing the Plek machine were working with the same principle, but initially they were trying to do that to the top of the frets, which made them play out of tune. So working together, we were able to come up with a hot rod Plek machine that will now do this for us. And it's not a robot; it's a video game. So the luthier makes the decisions, and we end up with something that's just what we want, and nobody gets hurt.
That's
So
awesome.
3 cheers for Plek.
Yeah, no kidding. That's great. That's funny that you were saying that. I was like, I imagine that would be hard to do via a machine, but you just kind of answered the question right there before I even
Yeah,
asked it.
because what we really do is we scan the fingerboard, and then on the monitor it's just like a CAT scan. You can see it from the side, you can see it in cross section, you can see the whole geometry, and the luthier can just do everything he'd do by hand in incredible detail down to a tenth of a thousandth of an inch, and then the machine will cut the board to that shape, and after the frets are in, it'll let it go back and kiss the top of the frets. And the measurements are so small, when you sight from the nut down, looking down the neck, you don't see that curve. It looks straight.
Interesting.
That's not
That's
why
very,
you
very
called,
interesting.
but when you ask how do you do a setup. But let me give you one more thing and I'll get off this, is the problem we had is the strings that are manufactured wouldn't work accurately enough for the setup we wanted to get. And that's why we designed our own strings and have them made to our specifications so we can get those to work as well as we want.
And so, what is different about the strings?
Okay, imagine this. We were talking a minute ago about how the steel string works. The string pulls the top up and then pushes down on the saddle and rocks the bridge. So you have 6 strings pulling on the bridge. And if you had those at random tensions, let's say one pulled at 10 pounds, one pulled at 32 pounds, and one pulled at a pound, your bridge is not going to rock in unison and give you even volume. It's going to be herky-jerky. It's not going to respond well. But if you line the strings up and put the tension in unison or in a logical array, it will drive the bridge in unison. The guitar will be louder and it feels better. Um, each string has a tension to it, and commercial strings are just random tensions. You buy a medium gauge of this brand and a medium gauge of another brand, and the tensions are all over the place. We needed to nail those tensions to get what we wanted, so we can make the string about the same size, but by varying the core wire to wrap ratio, we can vary the tension of the string by about 10 pounds. So that's the benefit of this, is it makes the guitar louder and it feels easier to play.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I've talked to some other smaller, string companies about this same concept. Like basically, creating the correct tension for the tuning and what kind of guitar you have
Well,
instead.
get this too. When you're in the recording studio, let's go back to electric land here. You're gonna, your engineer's gonna set up the EQ to give you the best presentation. In our acoustic guitar building, we build an EQ for a customer. So that guitar has the proper EQ for them. And then we go out and buy a commercial set of strings and it changes the EQ because the string tension's like a mini volume control. And by organizing these strings in the proper tension, we can have let's call it a neutral EQ, a flat response, and then the guitar can speak in its own voice. So we're getting, a little bit out there, but there's a lot of benefits to designing your own string when you're making this sophisticated a guitar.
So using the guitar as sort of the EQ for the player.
Sure.
What because I'm completely ignorant. What makes a guitar brighter or darker from a construction standpoint?
Okay.
Obviously different woods sound a little different, but I'm sure construction plays into it.
I'll learn you this. So we got you mentioned 2 things. When you said bright or dark, we're talking tone. If you play your string really close to the bridge, you get a bright, strident tone. You play up over the sound hole, it's a warmer tone. The volume's the same, but you've changed the tone. So that's the definition of tone. And then EQ is how loud it is in bass compared to treble. So here's how simple it is. The woods contribute to the tone. So when you build an acoustic guitar with Sitka spruce, generally that's a warmer, more forgiving tone than if you make it with Adirondack or European spruce, is a brighter, clearer tone. So for the player, if you played a style and you want your audience to hear every note you play and all the nuance, then something like a Adirondack spruce would be a perfect choice. It's really going to be articulate. If you're like me and you don't want the audience to hear every note you play, it's better to have something that's more warmer, blended, and forgiving for like singer-songwriter, folk, something like that, and that would be Sitka. So there's no better or worse in the woods. They're like a color or a flavor for tone. So then let's go to EQ,
Right.
how loud the bass is versus the treble. If you're playing a bluegrass dreadnought, generally you want a big predominant bass. If you're playing a jazz fingerstyle or classical, you'd hate that. You'd want the EQ to be even, so you decide when a note is loud or soft. Does that make sense so far? Okay, that's determined by
Yeah,
several
definitely.
factors. One of the most known is the shape of the bracing. When you scallop braces like a pre-war Martin, it really predisposes the guitar to bass. So a big bluegrass dreadnought's likely to have scallop braces. If we're making a jazz a guitar or something with fingerstyle open tunings where we want the EQ to be even, we'll do a different shape brace, more like a taper. So we can get an infinite variety of EQ by how we shape the braces. So there's the EQ. Also, the larger
That's
the
very interesting.
airspace in the guitar, the more predisposed it is to a bass. That's why the dreadnought's bassy and the double O is more even. You ask for it.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, one of the biggest. Hey, I did. This is great. It's fantastic. It's exactly what a guy like me needs. Um,
Well, this is where we get the recipe for custom work for somebody.
I see. Yeah, one of the things, one of the biggest surprises in my guitar playing or testing or whatever you want to call it history was I was shopping for my dad for a guitar for his birthday, and this local music store had a 1955 Martin 0017,
Oh, nice.
and I thought that looked
Yeah,
yeah, I thought that looks kind of
that's one of my
cool.
faves.
But well, so that's what I was gonna say. I don't know anything about the construction of it, of course, but I picked it up, played it, and was like, "Oh yeah, this is it." But I was actually thinking it probably wouldn't. Thinking initially, I was like, "I don't think this is gonna be what he wants," because he really likes big, like he his other favorite guitar is his Gibson SJ200.
Yeah, that's
Um,
quite a difference.
it's a big difference, but I
Yeah,
picked up that Martin and I was like, "There's something in this thing." But I was kind of shocked at how bright and articulate yet loud it was for being a smaller body guitar.
it is.
I don't know if you can shed any light
I
on that.
will. I will.
What's that?
Here's the most uh, uh, the biggest part of that. So let's go to 1920. Martin made double O K's all Koa guitar, Koa top, back, and sides. And a little later on, they made the 15 and the 17, which was all mahogany top, back, and sides. And I mention that because they're very similar woods and densities. And you get to play those old guitars, and more often than not, they sound spectacular. And you go, what is going on? It's a small guitar, it's a hardwood top. How could this sound so good? So then
Mm-hmm.
you go into your music store and you play a modern version of that, of let's say just for Martin. Here's the same guitar, they make it today, and you play it. And if you're kind, you would say it's mellow. If you were honest, you'd say, what's the matter with this guitar? It's really subdued. It doesn't have much volume. It doesn't have much sustain. And here's the difference. Back in 1920, they actually had some connection to Lutherie, and they knew on a smaller guitar they needed to scale the thickness down accordingly of the guitar top and the woods. So let's say those tops would have been like, let me just throw a number, 2.5 millimeters. Okay. And with that, you got a nice resonant
Hmm.
top. Worked well. We come into the modern day, and Martin makes like what, about 1 billion times more guitars per year today than they did back then. And for the sense of efficiency, all the top woods are going to go through a machine and come out the same size, whether they're a dreadnought, a single O, or whatever, a parlor. And now that top is going to come out spec probably around 3.2 millimeters or higher. So we've got almost 100% increase in thickness on the top, and it does no favors for sound. It's just too stiff to sound good. So it was, they were made proportionally back then, and today not so much. That's why it sounds so much better in those old ones. And here's the other thing: up until about 1870, guitars were really, really small. And the reason is they only had to be big enough to be heard in the biggest room in the house. And the state of Luthery had advanced to the point that those guitars were exquisite sounding. I mean, seriously, about as good as you could get in the sound of a guitar. The only reason guitars got bigger is because people started playing them on stage with barking dogs and banjos, and they needed more volume. So we get this dismissive thing about small guitars like they're toys or not real. But that's the history of it. Fun, huh?
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So I love the smaller guitars, and I love koa and mahogany for tops because when treated intelligently, they're spectacular.
Yeah, that Martin in particular was like one of my favorite guitars I've ever played. And I was like, this is, and they're kind of unsung heroes. I mean, I know that Dylan played one and all this other stuff, but they're not really like, they're not super expensive.
I know they will be.
They will be if we keep talking about them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, that's what inspired our 1929 series, because Martin came out with that back in the Great Depression to make a simpler guitar that, would attract people to buy it in hard times. And we did the same thing in 2008 when the world was ending financially. And I'd just been waiting for that opportunity because I wanted to make an all mahogany guitar.
That's awesome. That's really cool. In your estimation, you said there's a pretty big gap in between 1929 and what would be considered, modern by most standards.
Yeah.
In your opinion, when did that shift kind of occur?
It's progressive. It's not a light switch off and on. It would take parallel courses. So if you can think of it like this, kind of throw out the idea of handmade versus machine made. And let's think more in terms of making a guitar to hit a price target and making a guitar to try to build the best possible guitar. And so for the people, for someone building a guitar for a player and trying to do the best possible job, they're not restrained by how much they pay for wood or how much effort they put into making it sound good. The company that's trying to hit a price target, on the other hand, is a slave to how much they can pay for the wood and how much they can pay somebody to manipulate it. So as we look at growing brands like Martin or Gibson, or anybody else, as they made more and more guitars, they had to gain more efficiencies with it. And then we don't really have a model for the continuous single builder like that. People came and went because of the fickleness of the market. But that's why the market was so ready for us in the early 70s, because the large factories had really evolved to something where they weren't at their best. But they were the names and people bought those. And for somebody to come up with truly a more sophisticated sounding guitar at that time was really, really exciting. And that was our model. We didn't have a price target, partially because we didn't know to. And secondly, we had the hubris thinking we'd make the best sounding guitar possible. Is that helpful?
Build it and they will come.
Yeah,
like,
that's helpful. So there's not the magic about the pre-war guitars are, yes, they did use oftentimes better materials. They did have a little more of intelligent build, but there's also natural selection of a D28 Martin from the 30s now is like 6 figures. It's really, really expensive. But the ones that are left are the good ones. Darwinism. The ones that sounded really crummy and weren't easy to play got set aside, put in a closet, run over by a car. The ones that played well, sounded good, were prized. And so today we have a really nice selection of those instruments, or a really nice selected bunch of those instruments.
Right. The cream of the crop, sort of.
Yeah, right. Fun stuff.
Fun stuff for sure. Who, we've talked a lot about Martin and Gibson, and of course you got your guitars too, but
Yeah.
like, who are some maybe under the radar people that you would consider like doing really good work from any era? Just some people that don't get enough love, in your opinion, builders.
Yeah, that's interesting. To do a guitar right is pretty expensive, and there's I will give you some names that'll answer your question, but if I may, let me give you just a little bit of a background here. It's another secret of Stradivarius, and I don't mean that hubris. This is physically what they did. In the modern way of building guitars efficiently, whether you're making refrigerators, couches, bicycles, whatever, to mass produce, you would have a design that would dictate the size of each component, and you'd make these components accurately sized. So you'd have assembly stations where a piece would only fit one way, and the guy's job is to fit this piece into a framework, put glue on it, and pass it on, and you can save a lot of money. So let's call that a formula of dimensions. You make things all the same size, they go together quickly, and you do it. That's how any big company makes guitars at a low price. It's also true of some boutique builders and some individuals that do that too. Here's the fallacy: is the violin masters didn't make things to exact sizes. They made them to exact frequencies, and they were making an assembly that was like making a chord on a piano with the instrument. When the string energy put it into motion, it sustained and developed overtones and sounded good. So they worked their pieces to frequencies, not exact sizes. Do you follow the difference? Okay. So today,
Yeah.
anybody that's taking the time to do that can come up with a good one all the time. The factory, since they're doing pre-sized pieces, the frequencies are random, and like throwing rocks at a piano, every once in a while you might get a chord. Most of the time you get something that's not quite as sustaining and full as you want, and that explains the variation in factory guitars. So the people out there, there's very precious few people that discovered this on their own, but unless they went through violin building. But in large builders, there's people that went through our shop. I mean, no shameless boast on that. Several individual builders out there that are really shining stars that learned here and learned that technique. And in the boutique business, I'm going to say Dana Bourgeois is probably the guy that gets it the most. And understands those principles and builds his guitars that way. Thank God he has a difference of opinion about almost everything else than us, so there's a nice difference in the marketplace in that. But some of the people that are out there now building on their own, Jeff Traugott, Mark Maingard, Marc-Jan Vermeer. There's a few other in the U.S. and a couple of international ones that are people that have learned that process through us. Also, we're open source. I tell these secrets of violin builders on the internet. So if people want to follow through on that and take the time, they can do it. The damnable part is it's not efficient, and it makes the guitar really expensive.
Right. That makes sense. It does.
Yeah, because you'll find some people in the $20,000 range that truly build the same way that Taylor does by this dimension of formulas, but they have really good workmanship and really nice choices of wood. And not to dismiss them, the guitars are loud, but this complexity we're talking about, that's Lutherie.
I see.
I got way deeper than I wanted there. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have mentioned any names at all. I love Taylor, by the way. We've been friends since the very beginning. We share a lot of information.
That's really cool. No, this is all good stuff. No apologies for providing information. That's what the people are tuning in
this
for.
is the difference in what we do. Otherwise, it would make no sense for us to charge so much for the guitar.
I mean, it really does come down to time, right? It's one of those things. I'm very big into the guitar pedals and effects, and one of the things that's a reoccurring theme sometimes with people who think they know what they're talking about is, well, that's only $30 in parts, and
Yeah,
it's like,
that's
well,
funny.
sure,
That's really
yeah,
funny. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, what do you got? That's only a few $100s in wood. Why are you charging so
That's like
much?
eating
It's like,
the
oh,
best dinner you've ever had and say, how much could this have cost in, flour and eggs and toast to make this?
yeah. But it is a weird thing. I think it happens more often with guitar pedals for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Sure, people think it's a mechanical assembly and they could do it at home.
Yes, and then they try it, and then don't get me wrong. There's lots of guys that do, um, and they are really good at it. But it's definitely a weird thing to just assume.
I can imagine.
But so electrics. What are
Yeah.
what is your thoughts on those, and how do the two parallel each other? Or
Well, I love electric guitars. I love some of the early vintage stuff where people are just trying to figure out how to electrify a guitar. So the hybrids between acoustic and electric. I love solid bodies because shoot, I'm a boy, grew up in modern U.S. Of course, I got to love electric guitars.
right,
I
of
also
course.
love the classical and the mandolin. But as builders, we truly have a lifetime of work in what we have done to the acoustic guitar and what we'll continue to do on this. And I feel that if we were to make a solid body electric or a mandolin or whatever, it kind of dilutes our image, and people don't see us for truly the specialists we are in the acoustic. I think your question was really more, what do they have in common? Um,
Yeah, what do they have in
yeah.
common? And if you were to build one, what kind of considerations
Well,
would you put
our
in?
rule is everything we make, we want to be able to perform acoustically uh, in the exceptional range, and then we can pick it up. So we've done top guitars, uh, but to do a semi hollow body or something like that, not at this time for us, because again, we want the acoustic presence to speak first. So the things they have in common are function up to a point. Because you can get away with a lot of noise on an electric guitar that you can't get away with an acoustic, that the pickup won't transfer. And on the acoustic guitar, everything will come across as audible. Um, the choice of woods, the densities, and things like that, tone, and people sure spend a lot of time talking about that in music writing. About the particular tone and so forth of a guitar that would be based on, how heavy is the neck, how heavy is the body, and I think those things would have something to do with it for sure. Um, the When it gets into amplifying, I'm not even going to start because I'm not an expert in that.
That was funny because my next question was going to be an amplifier question, because like
Yeah.
it's it's in your opinion, what is the best way? Because like obviously, hearing a nice acoustic guitars like the ones you build is the best way to listen to them, is just to sit in front of them and listen to them. But that's obviously not an option in a stadium or a club or something like that. So
Yeah,
what is
if you like
the
to move
best way to
around.
go? Yeah.
Well, God, 1,000 years ago, Arnie Lazarus, the guy that developed the flat response acoustic pickup, said, if you want to authentically reproduce an opera singer at a louder volume, would you have them swallow a microphone? Of course not. It has to be something that represents the human voice out in front of it, where the audience hears it. And a guitar is not practical because we like to move around. So playing to a real good microphone is the answer. Since we can't do that, then we go to the different ways to amplify the acoustic sound of the guitar. And if I was I want LR Beggs to be the cutting edge best all the time because I think they have the best way of thinking. They have the best values. They treat people really, really well. And unfortunately, it's electronics. Every 6 months, something's going to be different and supersede that. But they do a really, really good product. For our customers looking for something functional, that does the job for them, that's not finicky. I turned to Brad Paisley. Brad Paisley uses a K&K pickup, both in recording and in the studio. And the guy could buy all pickup companies combined if he wanted to, and he uses the least expensive, pickup installation to get the sound that he has. So there's a lot of choices out there. And what we're looking for is backup that we have a pickup that gives us a pretty good uh, acoustic response, and people are on the road, they're playing, and they can get support out there. And that's why I think so strongly of Bags, because we can have an artist anywhere in the world with a problem get it addressed, in a short period of time. We
Hmm. That's interesting. I didn't know used that in
Isn't that
studio as
funny?
well. That's
That's what
pretty
he said.
uncommon, I would say.
There may be music magazines that know better than me, but that's what he told. um, the It's the age old problem. I don't really think there is anything out there that's going to make your guitar sound just like it is, but louder. But I will tell you this from experience, that the foundation is the key. The better the guitar responds acoustically, the better you're going to get response out of a acoustic pickup. What we do really, yeah,
Yeah,
go
that
ahead.
makes a ton of sense. Kind of like when I was gonna say it's kind of like when recording, try to get the best
Right.
sound
What we
you
really
can
do
and then
is,
manipulate it after that type of thing.
everything we don't make, we design and have made for us, like strings, tuning machines, and cases. And we thought about that with pickups, but truly there's no one pickup right for every application. So what we really do is we don't supply a pickup with our guitars. We have the customer identify that, and we'll put it in. So that's what we do with pickups. We'll ask people what their favorite is, or we'll make a recommendation. So we probably use like 4 different companies in our pickups.
Gotcha, gotcha. This is all
Sure.
very, very interesting. So I want to talk about necks a little more. We talked about the fretboard and all that kind of stuff. What about just do you build the necks more? Do you have like a system in place, or do you
Well,
just kind of go off what the players
sometimes you
say
can
they
count on
like, or how do
what
you
people
go about
say.
determining that?
Sometimes they don't know how to say what they want. So we have a lot of neck choices. If somebody goes into a store that stocks 30 of our guitars, like Artisan in Franklin, Tennessee, or Sullivan here in Santa Cruz, they can play a lot of different styles and necks, including some custom, and they can tell us what they like as far as the shape, and we can copy that. We can also copy somebody's old Les Paul, or in the case of Brad Paisley, again, his dad gave him a '38 Martin that had so much wear on it, but he wanted that. He wanted that shape. So we do probably 70% of our custom guitars. We shape next to the customer's preference. The other ones we have standard, and we can cut a neck on a CNC. Unfortunately, in the case of Brad Paisley, the neck's so complicated, the CNC runtime is as long as it would take our master carver to do it by hand. So the way we solve that is we do custom necks. So that's the shape. The string spacing, the shape of the neck, the scale length can all be done. Another thing is the neck will affect the presence of the guitar, and I bet this is true in electrics too. The heavier the neck, the more it blocks vibration from exiting the body and chimneying into the neck. So you get more projection, more separation of the notes out of the acoustic guitar if the neck is heavier. If the neck is lighter, vibration does chimney into the neck. It broadens the acoustic resonant surface, and you get a more open, airy sound. So think of a singer-songwriter sitting on a stool with a 12-fret neck, slotted pig head, open back gears. That's really light, and the guitar is going to be open and airy. And then think about uh, player in a jazz ensemble with an archtop guitar with a maple neck, a huge peg head, and heavy gears. And that one really projects and cuts. So we can manipulate that weight by using a different density of wood, a different kind of wood, different shape, different gears, and so forth. The customer does not know to ask for that, but we know to use that as one of our tricks for manipulation.
I see. They kind of describe the sound, and then you go, well, then we need to make this one with a.
Yeah, right. Or I'm listening to what the context, where are they playing, what are they playing, how are they playing, and I can make that suggestion. The thing is, most of the stuff we do, people don't have a vocabulary for. Our job is to get them the right guitar based on what we can see and hear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Describing sound is always kind of hard, you know?
Oh,
It's
no kidding. Also, people get intimidated if you give them too many choices. They're going to go buy a Taylor because it's easier.
well, that's that is very, very true. I've seen that. It's a paralysis by analysis
Yeah,
type
that's right.
situation.
We're consumers. We know that one for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember the first time I had a guitar built, they were like, "What color do you want?" And it was like, "Oh, wait, I can have it any color I want."
Yeah,
Oh boy, and
I'm
it
gonna
took
go
me
home and lay
forever.
down.
Yeah, like I can't make these kinds of life changing decisions
Oh,
right
that's
now.
funny.
And then by a different token, one of the most enjoyable, and you would only do this, of course, if you really trusted the luthier. But one of the most enjoyable experiences I said was like, yeah, I want it with this scale length and this body shape, and I like big necks, and you just do the rest of it, and
That's
whatever you
great.
come up with is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
it is.
Christmas then.
So when we're building a right guitar for somebody, uh, my job would be they can show me they're playing what they do. I can recommend a wood that would fit for their tone, or they'll come up with a wood they've heard of on the internet. It's my job to tell them what tone to expect on that. So it's pretty straightforward.
What's the weirdest material that people don't think of? Is it always wood, or can you get some different materials sometimes that you actually like to use?
Well, I am a huge proponent of man-made materials and cheaper guitars, simply so we don't waste the resource. Um, if you go to one of the big trade shows and you see guitars for $149 and they got a spruce top on it, please, it's not necessary and not helpful. So, the modern materials like the carbon graphite. In fact, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm getting a guitar for my kid, I have no idea if they're going to play for 2 days or 2 weeks or 20 years. What should I get? Um, the carbon graphite guitars are, you can make them super playable. They won't change in playability, and they're loud. There's nothing complex or sophisticated about them, but they're super, super durable, and that's great. Um, in the innovations in classical build now, the Kevlar web, or where the luthier can make a 1 millimeter uh, uh, piece of wood sandwiching this Kevlar and make a really durable top with minimal bracing and so forth is also really exciting and kind of production friendly. Um, all these things are great for value and getting the price down and serving a function. But remember, what we really want out of our guitar is inspiration. We want to be inspired to write a song to change the world or make somebody fall in love. And that comes from the complexity, the richness of overtones and sustain. So, any guitar that's boring sounding, you'll get bored with eventually. And that's where our service comes in. So we can't avail ourselves at this point of any man-made stuff and expect to get the sophistication that we have. Maybe it'll come. I'm open-minded, but not yet.
I see. I see. That's intriguing. I would be very curious to see what, technology's a crazy thing. I wonder
Oh,
what we'll
it's
see
neat.
in the future.
People
But
don't. Oftentimes, people mistake volume for quality, and it's easy to make a really, really loud guitar. To make a guitar that, again, that's sophisticated sounding and gives pleasure to the player and the audiences. That's luthery. That's where the time comes in.
for sure. for sure. So, did you learn most of this stuff on your own, or did
Heck no.
you? Who were some of your mentors in all this stuff?
Heck no. My uh, my I've saved up for a Martin for a long time, and unfortunately got stolen. And fortunately, when I went to this storefront loan place to get the money to buy an Epiphone Texan, the loan officer was a guitar maker, and I had been trying and trying and trying to get some traction in guitar making. And this guy did it as a hobby. His name is Bruce McGuire, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And he was an angel. He was a classical builder. He let me come over to his house like once a week and build a steel string and figure it out. And I am incredibly indebted to him. And he's also one that when I asked him what I could do in return, he said, just show somebody else and don't ask for anything. And I said, okay, and I do. That's why our company is open source, and you see me talking about guitars so much because I owe it to him. The next one was Jim Patterson. Jim wrote the first book on mother of pearl inlay, and he was a hobbyist, and he was a steel string builder here in Santa Cruz. And I stumbled across him, and he was the same way. Very very giving. He passed away at 88, and he said the same thing. He said, just pass this on to other people. So you see why I'm stuck with that. So those are my two official mentors, and then my education is still ongoing. I've luckily been able to travel around the world for buying wood and promotions, and I'm always stopping in to learn how to French polish or lutes or violins. So my education is still ongoing.
What's one of the most recent things that you learned about guitar making that was surprising to you?
Wow.
I know we're asking the hard-hitting questions.
There's something that's I think is not too mundane or too uh, uh, stupid here. Where you with anything you do, there's some point where you go, "I'll be darned!" I had no idea.
Oh,
We
totally.
have so much control over what we do. We're never surprised when we're finished with the guitar. Um, I'm racking my brain about this. I'm always picking up, something daily for this, and most of the things that I've learned recently are a little esoteric. One is I was in Hamburg, and I was in a shop with a guy for a week, and he was a lute maker, and I was taking. I was learning how to do French polish with him, and he had some nicks in the maple, and he gets this little jar out and unscrews it and takes out this kind of wheat colored powder and mixed it with hide glue and filled up this chip out in the maple and then came back and sanded it, and it was just invisible. And I said, what? I said, was that maple dust? And he go, no, it's a fungus, it's a mushroom, and violin makers know about it, but it's a big secret. And I went, now that's hip. There's something great.
That
So
is cool.
I've got this, and I have to translate the name, but it's mushroom dust that works awesome on maple to repair stuff, because no matter how carefree we are, how good your intentions are, stuff happens, and part of being a great luthier is knowing how to cover your tracks.
That's true. That's true.
So I like that. We also, in our string research, man, was that enlightening. Sometimes you think that adults have really figured something out and there's no possible improvement that you could make to it. And you start looking into it and you go, well, humans are all the same. You get so far, you want to go to market, and you go. And one of the things I did with the strings is I asked all the manufacturers, if price was no object, you didn't have to worry about a price point, what would you do? And we got some really great information on that. And that's what we wanted. It doesn't matter what it costs. We just want the best strings we can do. So there's going to be more out there. That's for sure.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you shed any light on that yet, or is that still kind of?
Yeah. I'll tell you this. One of the things that was a byproduct of what we did. We weren't looking for something like longevity. I thought that was more of a marketing issue, how long your strings lasted. But what I found out is it's not the coating of strings that are the biggest factor. It's the precision with which they're made. So it's pretty simple. If you really wound strings like jewelry, really tight and snug, the tonal life will be a whole lot longer than one that was done for a price target. So it's done quicker, not quite as precision, but at a great price. Um, and so it turns out our strings last like probably 2 and 3 times longer than most commercial strings. And that was a really nice byproduct. And the way we did it was instead of using that little, I don't even know what it is. The ball end on a string, you look at them and they all come from the same place. I don't know if they're a byproduct of some other manufacturer or something, but you could probably get a boxcar load, for $1.50. And they're like a little aluminum thing. And usually if you hold the string up, they'll actually rattle. In there. And what we wanted to do instead is machine a solid alloy ball end that had a precision machine groove in it, so you could put the string on it, wrap it tight, and then do the wind on it, and it was super snug. And that, along with the tolerance for the wrap of the wound strings, just make them last like crazy. We didn't want to coat the strings because people have some yuck factor on coated strings. It's what it is. It's they're exposed to an atmosphere that's anti-corrosive, so they don't really add any weight to it, but they don't rust.
Right. Well, and I've personally never been a big fan of the coated strings either, from a feel or a sound thing. I'm kind of pessimistic on them a little bit. I've always
most people are. For us, it was when Elixir came out, it's like, oh, thank goodness, because we sent a guitar to a store and one person plays it with the wrong skin chemistry, and the guitar is unsaleable, and that helped. But we're really glad we came across this.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're getting down to the last couple minutes of the main episode here, and
now the dangerous stuff.
Oh, this is the make it or break it question. I hope you're sitting down for this, because a lot of people, and choose your words carefully, because
you're making this good.
It's very controversial, some people's answers.
Yeah.
So, what is Mr. Hoover's favorite kind of pizza?
Pizza.
Pizza.
Pizza?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Where are you calling from?
Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay. Not Chicago or New York, so I don't have to worry about that.
No, I do got a lot of listeners in both locations. So
yeah, we do. We do. What I'm going to tell you is come to my house. Between my wife and my Italian next door neighbor, I don't think there's anything better on the planet. But that's not what you're asking. You're asking the style of it. So what's the kind that has the thinnest crust and relies mostly on the other stuff for flavor? What style would that be?
That seems like a kind of an Italian thing. New York's really thin too.
Thin.
But
I'm not a fan at all of quantity over quality. Skinny, crispy crust and the good stuff, and Italian sausage and black olives.
That sounds like a good pizza. I think you passed the test.
That was fun.
Well, right on. I am too. That made me kind of hungry.
Well, Blake, come see us sometime.
I would love to.
It's downhill.
I would absolutely love to.
If you go to the NAMM
That's
show.
true. I am going to be coming to the NAMM show.
Oh, that's great. Well, you're very welcome. I'd love to walk you through and show you this firsthand.
That would be fantastic. We'll make it a date then.
Cool.
Right on. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to tell the listeners? This is kind of your chance to throw up a billboard and say where can they find you? What else do they need to know, or just whatever you want to say?
Well, sure. There's two things here, and they're personal. One is charity is something that you do when nobody's looking. If you brag about it, it's marketing. And I felt the same way about using woods responsibly. For my whole career, I have a reverence for the nature of the woods and trees, and so our processes, we only use responsibly harvested wood. And I used to think it was something that was personal. I shouldn't talk about it, but I had some people that are really involved in conservation and education say, "You idiot, tell people about it," because it's important for this message. We can make the best stuff in the world without compromise. We can get the best sounding wood without participating in deforestation or cultural upheaval, and we do that. One of the secrets of the violin masters, we do that by using old wood. So our guitar tops, our say Sitka spruce from Alaska, probably averages 75 to 150 years old. We use stuff all the way up to 3,000 years old. We get older wood, we get better sounding instruments, and we don't have to cut a tree. We also get wood from secondary sources, maybe an old inventory from a boat builder, guitar maker, down trees, sunken logs, and all that. And we're in 42 years of this, that wood finds us. So we don't have to make an excuse about, well, we use such little wood, it's okay to use something that comes from clear cutting or things like that. It's really people like us, our responsibility to set the model for that we use our resources responsibly, and they'll be there for the preceding generations.
That's great. I think that's important because if we use all the wood, then we won't be making any more guitars or anything else that's.
Oh, no kidding. Well, here's a fun thing. When we make we made a guitar for our 40th anniversary, and the back and sides came from a sand mine in the Czech Republic, and they were carbon dated at 8,000 years old. The spruce top had been frozen in the permafrost in Alaska for 3,000 years, and that's totally impractical. But it was a great way to tell the story.
That's awesome.
Old wood sounds better, and it's a better thing all around.
That's great. That's fantastic. All right. Well, I feel like that's a pretty good way to wrap this section up. So I'll go ahead and do my outro. Thank you for that, Richard.
Okay. Well, thank you. I also work with perfect people, and that makes it a whole lot easier to do.
That's very true. That's very true. It's all about the people, isn't it?
No kidding. Yeah, no kidding. It is. Blake, that was a good job. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So for Richard, this is Blake, and as always, folks, good luck and good tones. And there you have it. If you need more of that conversation, obviously, you heard on the episode, patreon.com/tonemob is the place to get it. And if you don't want any more of that conversation, then don't go there. And actually, as I record this bit, Jess is coming over tomorrow to record some more Patreon content. So there's always extra tone mobbery on the internet over at patreon.com/tonemob. And I actually said it right this time, the first time. This is fantastic. I feel great about myself. Don't bring me down. If you need anything else, you guys know where to find me on all the socials, at the Tone Mob on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Honestly, thank you guys so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means. I know I say that every week, but I say it because it's true. It's like flabbergasting to me that people are listening to this. So thank you so much. Please continue to do so. And if there's anybody you think would get a kick out of this or get any kind of, anything out of this, please tell them about it. It's here for you guys. And if nobody was listening, there would be absolutely no point in doing any of it. So thank you again so much. If you need more, hit me up, and info@tonemob.com is the email for the show and for anything else Tone Mob related. Otherwise, you know where to find me on the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Instagrams. I'm around. So thank you again, and I hope you have a fantastic week. And maybe you get yourself a new delay. That'd be great. Get yourself a new delay. You deserve it. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.